announcement that I sent out with the reminder email is that Teams is now doing is recording the transcript, and it looks like it's been doing that since about April, and I can download those, and I will download and upload, and so we'll have that other accessibility resource, and hopefully at some point we'll backfill the many other episodes that have been, and they are not terrible transcripts if you are already kind of familiar with what words could be when they're wrong. And always reach out with questions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to y'all.
Okay. So Mike, last time we covered parallel-sided species, and that went well. One question though that came up, and I believe someone in the member audience, now the name escaped because I just saw it just before we got on. Pardon? Laurel?
Laurel, but she's not with us today.
Oh, she's not. Okay. So the question was, when I talk about tooth number, I'm counting from the tip to the base, and it's pretty clear that you are counting from the base to the tip.
Yeah, I knew this would come up.
Okay.
It's a long explanation, but yeah, the tradition is the way you're doing it. That's the way all Megachile revisions work, and most other Megachile stuff. However, Osmia, this is kind of Sandhouse's revision of Osmia. She did it the opposite way. The basal tooth was the first tooth, and in doing these workshops over the years, when I first started using the Megachile key, it became pretty clear that the numbering system that you're using, which is the right one, was counterintuitive. So I changed it and just had the basal tooth be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm to blame. I can change it, but I think as long as people understand that I'm considering the basal tooth as the first tooth, I think that they can figure it out.
And I think that I also, because there's a lot of confusion as what's tooth. Let's say we're using the traditional system, that when you talk about tooth 1, whether you include the tip or not include the tip. And so a lot of people a tooth is not, that's not a tooth, right?
Good point.
So I usually, I think mostly in the guide, but we probably need to go through it and make this clear, particularly if people are using your guides too at the same time. But that tooth number 1 is the very point, and then you count back from there. For our system, and your system, it would be the same, I would presume. Like when you say I have a 4-tooth Megachile, you're including the tip as a tooth 4, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Right.
Right, that's good. All right. Well, there are so many different ways, when we talk about taxonomic nomenclature. So, for example, you using Sandhouse's work, who is actually maybe the first female bee taxonomist, and she did a lot of work on Osmia and also on lazy glossum, I know. And that's kind of pretty amazing because that was in the 30s, right?
Yeah, a long time ago.
So it would be interesting for someone to do a bio there. But and the opposite thing is that when we talk about these teeth issues, that we probably need to clarify what's going on. So and the general thing I wanted to mention is that, for example, a lot of the nomenclature in the Discover Life Guide is very much influenced by Mitchell, and then dabbles elsewhere. And it doesn't use so I think a lot of the most recent literature uses that, was it a South African revision of all Hymenopteran nomenclature, body parts?
Yeah.
But it's really, I find it really clunky, right? Compared and non-intuitive. You're basically memorizing a whole new set of nomenclature that I found not necessary. So I've stayed with, we all have these things, and each person, and there's no true there's just patterns. There's no law. Like Mike is not going to jail for counting his teeth backwards. We just have to let people know, and also have good diagrams and things. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, if you define your terms, I mean, that's about all you can do.
Yeah. So we're going to now non-parallel sided Megachile, and you'll see what we're talking about. We talked last time about the fact that the widest point in the abdomens of the non-parallel sided ones, because parallel sided is still a relative term, that the in non-parallel sided ones, the widest point is well north of the midline of the abdomen, as a way of, helping describe that and wrap our minds around. So what you'll see today is this more teardrop triangular thing.
For females.
Yeah, for females. And males, very different
Yeah.
set for how you might identify things. So let's jump in, and we're going to go to, again, we'll use Mike's key as a guide. A lot of this appears in Discover Life, but again, I find it useful just to go through a dichotomous key, because it's much more programmed and logical in terms of a progression in a discussion. Did I share this yet? No. But the same, and then really what we're doing is introducing you to Mike's keys an awful lot, and at the same time dealing with the characters that also are going to show up in Discover Life. And I learn actually a lot from Mike's stuff, because he often sees things slightly differently. Okay, so let's go to the key, and everyone's seeing the key now. Say if you are not.
No, I don't see it.
You don't see it? Okay. All right. So maybe I didn't share this properly. So what do you see? Just the normal Zoom window? Oh, maybe I didn't complete this process. Share content. How about now? What do you see? A picture of parallelis?
Yep.
Okay.
Or something. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So we'll go to the key here. And again, if we go to the top of Mike's key, here we have the split parallel sided, non-parallel sided. We're going to now jump to couplet 11. And now we're confronted with the pubescence of head, all or near, and thorax, all are nearly blackish. Okay, and we'll 12, and you can see by the small number that this is only going to be a one couplet, so only two species. And so if we look here, so we showed last time Xylocopoides, which is just so easy. We don't even have to go back and look at that. Completely black, nothing else on there. But then Pruina, and so Mike, you go ahead and start the Pruina discussion here about the forms and things like that, and then I'll kick in too on some of my experience. So we've talked about this a bunch. It's interesting species.
Yeah, there seem to be two extreme forms in Pruina, and it's all on at least in my experience, on the Gulf Coast. It doesn't get much further north. I don't know about Atlantic coast. You can speak to that, Sam.
Yeah.
But in the same place, the same time, like the same plants, there'd be dark, very dark forms, and then light forms. And I don't find anything really in the middle. It's either one or the other. But the males look the same in terms of genitalia. The females look the same in terms of structural morphology. It's just these differences in pubescence color. And it's
so
kind of.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just kind of mystifying in a way.
Yeah, and so we had a sort of ongoing project. We did national parks and refuges that were along the coast and from well up north down and around Florida. And so Pruina showed up pretty regularly. It seems to be okay about going into bowls. I think of it as a dune specialist, in those areas. And I don't see it, for example, I don't know that there are any records. I'd have to go back and look in the sandhills. And I don't know about, I could be wrong, I don't know about interior Florida where there's, huge amounts of sand. I could be wrong about that too. And if I remember right, it's mostly light forms in North Carolina, which is the northern extent of its range. Probably does occur in Virginia on the coast there too, but I haven't seen it north of that, and then runs down and becomes darker and darker. And then these dark forms show up below. And you really don't get it anywhere away from the coast. Now, I'd have to look again at Florida to see if that's true, but it's a relatively easy species to ID, and you'll see it come out in a couple of places, and in Discover Life, it's pretty straightforward. And the impression is really long hairs on the scopal hairs for some reason, and then mysteriously in the middle of the Midwest, in that sort of Kansas area, were some additional records, but I haven't been able to track down. Michener, I think, ID'd them. So or maybe it was Mitchell, but there's some weird upper Midwest Kansas area. So maybe they're at KU specimens, and that just doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't. And I've looked at a lot of Kansas material over the past 10 years, thousands of specimens from all over the state, and recently collected, and I've never seen that bee. So right. I've wondered about that.
Yeah. So we, if anyone ever runs across Midwestern Pruina specimens, we would be interested in looking at them because they potentially are just misidentifications. I mean, we all do that. Even the Mitchell and Michener types. If that was where they came from, they may be just reporting these things. So the dark form, again, very easy because of these characters, and then we'll see it come out again in the light form. But I recall on Discover Life, it keys out very easily.
Yeah, and those are the only two dark Megachile really east of the Rocky Mountains that I know of.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so so we're going to jump down to 13, and we have this interesting specimen here, parallela, which I have lined up, and it has, as Mike is noting here, so let's back up one. S6 has lots of action. It's always worth looking at S6 in most specimens because there's a lot of distinctive patterns there, and you'll see it come up, particularly in this next batch, quite a number of different times and ways. And in this one, you have a region that's and I'll show it. It's reflexed up. Well, I'll try and get that specimen up, Mike, if you want to talk about parallela, which is a monster big thing, and what your observations are.
Yeah, this is one of the bigger species of Megachile in the east. I don't know how far east it gets. Fairly common throughout most of the greater Midwest. Never seems to be really abundant, but you always pick up one or two here or there. Oh, that's good. Yeah. So what Sam's going to show is the very ultimate tip of the 6 sternite.
So these are the sternites here. This is the cavity in which the sting would emerge, and here's the T6, the tergite. So go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. So what you're seeing there is this smooth, shiny, but very tiny. When you put it under a scope, it looks very conspicuous the way Sam has it laid out here, but it's often easy to miss, especially if there's some junk or something else at the hind end. But it's shiny and it reflects upwards at a very almost 90-degree angle. And you're looking head on, so you don't see that reflection, that upturning very clearly. But that's unique to this species. Now there's some others that have the tip of the 6 sternum has something roughly similar, but none of them have it reflexed upwards like
Right.
parallela does.
That's the tricky part, particularly if you haven't seen something like this, is that, yes, if you see it, then it's like, oh my gosh, so obvious. But it's the angle that's important because there's, you know, I want to say like albitarsis maybe,
Yep.
but there's a couple others where this end of S6, and I'm going to turn this a little bit so you can see it better, but this end of S6, instead of being covered by hairs, which mostly there's this fringe of hairs around the tip of S6, and it's occluding completely the integument of sternite 6. But in a few cases, it's bare like this, but not reflexed or it's like bent backwards. And you can see a slightly different sort of wording, and some of the other could be mistaken for things in Discover Life too. All right, so let's let me shift this a little bit so we can see this, because I remember before I had even seen parallelis is like, what are they talking about there? And then I tried to make everything into parallelis. All right, so that's just a slightly different angle, and you can see the sternites there. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to flip it. I'm going to look this way, and you won't see very much of this because it's angled up, and you'll see the rest of the S6 and what is happening with the hairs there. That is not sufficient. And again, it's a really big bee. So it's like latimanus. It's a couple, there's not that many, particularly these non-parallel sided things. There's not that many bees that are actually this big. All right, so here, if we just look this way, which would be traditionally what you would look, you would see, okay, here's this fringe of hairs. There are hairs throughout, and then you don't see anything else. So you would stop there and not notice that this end is turned up. I'm going to turn it now on its angle so you can see it from the side obliquely here. And see if we get a better shot of that. I kind of think of this as a, I think if you're getting this species, you're in really good habitat kind of thing. I don't know. Do you have any notion of its food groups?
I've collected it from a number of different things. It seems to like Asteraceae, but that's a lot of them do. But I find it in some urban gardens out here sometimes.
All right, so this is probably,
there you go, you're getting there.
This is the best shot here. I'm at my highest magnification, but so here's S6, and as often is the case, it's slightly orangish or a different color from the rest of the scopal hairs. And here is this upward bent end of the integument, which is not covered by the hairs. And in a couple of these others, if we remember, we'll look for this segment that might be projecting beyond the hairs, but be in line with the rest of S6, not bent.
Yeah. And another thing parallela has, the females, there's that little tiny denticle on the end of the middle end of the clypeus that only a few others have something like that. So that's kind of an additional thing to look for.
Yeah,
and the size.
Yeah, and a lot of the ones that do have that denticle is actually a good point, is those are mostly smaller species.
Yeah.
There we go. Again, we have the if hairs often are gook too. So there's that little denticle. Let's see if I can get it up even more. but it's pretty difficult to see the hairs. And that's always the problem, right? Is that you might dismiss this as not having that tiny little spot because you're looking for something different, or you just weren't holding the specimen in the right angle, or there's a bunch of crud here. So this is why multiple avenues to ID can be good, particularly if you have something uncommon like the species is in a lot of its range. And it really doesn't occur in the east until you get down to Florida, the far east. I don't have the map in front of me, but I don't believe it's going. Do you see it in Ohio?
I never have. I don't know,
Yeah.
Sam.
I think of it as a plains species, and then for some reason showing up in Florida. All right, back to the key. So there's parallela, knocks it out there. We go down to this next section, which basically is saying it's not parallela for the reasons that we just spoke about. So we're going to 14, and so we're now back. I don't have a specimen of this. I've only collected one.
This is the real giant. I mean,
Yeah.
You can identify this one from 20 feet away. It's a real monster, and all the hairs are kind of a yellowish, tawny, orangish, all of them, and it's a very distinctive, really distinctive species. And it's throughout the Midwest, but it's never very common, and it's almost always on sunflowers. Hardly ever find it on anything else.
So mostly on the annual
various woodland sunflowers, various kinds.
And here, as we were speaking about, here's S6. Does have that bare apical margin, but is not bent up and is also not as large. But again, when you get into comparisons, you're very narrow. You could say that about parallela too, but it's not moving beyond that. And the male is spectacular.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about males another time. So everything else is smaller, and that one and doesn't have the yellowish hair and combinations with the S6 patterns. And the 4 basotarsus, I just don't see this specimen with long fringe of hairs on the posterior margin. It sounds distinctive too, but again, I don't have that experience. So is that pretty noticeable, Mike? It
is, yeah. But again, just seeing an image of this bee is all you need to really see. I mean, it's really nothing quite like it.
Yeah, 18 millimeters. And again, yeah, you can Google up most of these. Okay, smaller. See, 15 millimeters or less. So you're really dropping in size now for the rest of these. And we go to 15, and now we get into the S6s again. So we have one set of couplets where there's a bare patch in the upper half, and we'll see this, and then another similar to the parallelus where it's hairy throughout. So what you're going to look at when you flip the specimen over is you're going to look for whether it has a bare area in the middle of S6 or not, and it's usually pretty obvious.
And one challenge sometimes is it's covered, but there's a lot of pollen involved, and you might have to remove some of the pollen to be certain of what you're seeing.
We have less of that problem since almost everything comes in liquid, and then we throw it into.
Okay.
So, pollen be gone. There's penalties for that, but one of them is not the fact that they're clogging up a lot of the specimens. It depends. Sometimes the pollen is incredibly sticky. Okay, so we're now going to bare half ones, and we'll show that 16. We jump down here, and now we're having another split between, and I'll pull up a specimen while Mike talks about between short and long in there. So I'm going to pull up Montevega, largely because I don't have albitarsis here in the female. So if you want to talk about what we're going to look at, Mike.
Yeah, so we're talking about T6 now, and probably the best way to view it is at least to start off with.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. I took it. I'm so stuck on S6. I was like, that's an interesting character. So T6. Sorry, my fault.
Yeah, once you've decided that S6 has a bare area without hairs, then you start looking at T6, and you want to do, are you going to show S6 first, Sam? So,
yeah, I'll
hold off on that.
Bare area there. Yeah. For some reason, I was like, I've never seen that short hairs on S6, and that's because it's not.
Got ahead of myself. Yeah.
All right, so let me angle it a little bit differently here. So
that's showing up good.
I think we can see it better from the side a little bit. Yeah. So there are hairs all over the place, but what you're looking for is that the insertion points do not occupy the middle. And as I think we both have pointed out, usually I think maybe almost always, there's short fringe around the edge and often of a different color. So in Discover Life, we ask about the fringe color, the color of the longer hairs, and whether there's a bare area or not, as in the set of S6 things. But you can see this, that the hairs are here, the insertion ports are down there, and these short ones are up here, but there's really nothing in the middle on this specimen.
And we're ignoring the unpitted section that would typically be under the sternite before it?
Yes, mostly if I read you right, Claire, that's normally retracted. So if this abdomen was pulled apart, what would happen is that you would see a bare area that it normally lives underneath the previous section here. So this one's extended a bit. So most cases, this rim, this is S6, S5. This is the rim of S5. This section here, thank you for pointing it out, Claire, is also bare, but it's normally hidden and that's why it has no pits, because why put in a bunch of pits when it's not a place where you're going to get potentially stung or beat up or need the area strengthened. And Mike, I don't know what you think, but I think of pitting as a way of armoring, deflecting stings, and making the integument stronger. Is it?
I don't know, Sam. I don't know. Have you ever stuck a pin through Andrena nuda? The integument is without hardly any pits on the scutum, but you need a hammer to get a pin through the scutum. It's very, very tough. So I don't know. And there are bees that have very little pitting at all. So I've always wondered about that. Certainly in the parasitic groups, they're the heavy sculpture and heavy pitting, that definitely certainly must protect them. But
yeah,
I don't. And so
maybe it's not so much thickening. I wonder, what about, I've heard it as a way of deflecting a sting.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. All right. Someone else can work that out. Anyway, so just to reiterate, this bare area is normally not visible. It goes to there, is underneath. This specimen is slightly stretched. So the bare area we're talking about is here.
And in the key, it mentions the apical half of S6, so that hopefully helps.
All right. So, but when you talk about the apical half, you're actually talking about the apical visible half, right?
Yes.
All right. So now I'm flipping it to see the T tergite area. Should I turn it on the side or straight down, do you think?
I think either one is going to work for Maffei, definitely. So,
okay, go ahead, Mike.
yeah, what you're seeing in this image is T6, the dorsal surface, and you'll notice there are very few hairs and very densely finely punctate. But once you've seen some other species of Megachile, this one stands out because there are so few hairs, and if you see it, depending on the light angle, sometimes you can see a sort of a soft whitish surface, all these minute hairs that kind of give you that reflection. But there's nothing fuzzy at all about this T6. It's very basically naked, and that's pretty unique.
Okay, and we'll in a minute see some contrasting specimens.
That's perfect. Good to see. You got it. Yeah.
So now that we have Montevega on deck, and so Mike had albitarsis and Montevega in the same couplet, but Montevega also shares something oddly, I think, with the species that were in the parallel-sided group. So
yes.
different subgenera, and I'm not sure why, unless you know something about Montevega, why they would have no cutting teeth. Do you know that whether they're like resin or users or make pebbles or use dirt or something in their nests?
I have had a couple of those in trap nests from Michigan, but it's been so long, I'd have to go back in my notes to remember exactly what they were using. And I will say, Sam mentioned it, this looks like a parallel-sided thing, so why isn't it included in the parallel-sided ones? Well, it is. So it comes out in two places in the key, because it's one of those species that we don't always necessarily agree that it's parallel-sided or not. So it comes out in two different places, just to kind of CYA. So
yep. So here's, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is one, another, I had a hard time when I was learning Megachile dealing with this, because this is a species that is considered to have 5 teeth. And yeah.
Yeah, so, right. That's.
Does it or doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
And I don't know if in Discover Life, whether we have scored it so that, so in Discover Life, the nice thing is like, well, if you don't know, you can score it for both. Right. And there'll be another character, but there's 4 and 5 in the theoretical sense, but you can see not super clear. So sometimes, again, when you're dealing with a specimen, you in Discover Life will want to score it probably for both 4 and 5 if it's not clear to you or you don't have other means of looking at this. But often the lack of the cutting teeth go down that route.
And this is a fairly widespread common thing. I find it in all kinds of areas. Never very abundant, but it always, seems to show up. You find that on the coast, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. It's shows up here and there at low numbers. And I don't have a good sense of why it's in one place or another.
I don't either.
Okay, so here we had this couplet here that was split with the short hairs. We saw the short hairs in Montevega. Now we're going to go to T6 with long hairs group, and the first one is we're splitting out things with 4 teeth and things with 5 teeth. But I think because latimanus and paraherda, which I'll let Mike talk about those here while I line something up on deck. These are very clear 5-toothers and also have very, like, I just need to look at the teeth and I'm like, I know what that is. So I'm gonna, Mike, I'll turn it over to you while I get
These are fairly good sized Megachiles on the large side, not as big as parallela or fortis, but they're still good, pretty good chunky bees. Both ground nesters, and the females are so similar I don't trust myself separating them. They're largely geographically separated. There's some overlap in the parts of the Great Plains. The males are distinctive, but females, there are some of the literature considers hair color on the tergites to be a helpful character to distinguish the females, but it doesn't seem to work for me. However, if you're east of the Mississippi River, there are no records of male paraherta. There are a couple records in Mitchell from Illinois of females, but I'm not aware of any males ever being found east of the Mississippi. Maybe up in Canada, I think there might be some records in east, in Ontario, maybe. I think I've never seen them, but I've heard of them. So, so if you're up in the upper Midwest, or maybe even upper New York or something, maybe there's a possibility. There's just no documentation of it at this point. So,
Great.
But latimanus is common, and it's mostly I see it in sandy areas a lot. It loves things in the bean family and Asteraceae.
And more northern than southern, although I've got a data set, interestingly, of specimens that I'm still processing for the Washington, D.C. area, collected in I want to say the 60s. And there was a whole bunch of latimanus in there, and I never get it at D.C. It's always to the north and to the west. So there's, I think we can talk about range changes in at least a few of these species.
Yeah, it doesn't occur in southern Missouri. It's in northern Missouri, but we've never found it south of the Missouri River.
Yeah.
And this is latimanus on deck, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Got it.
And this is one. The five teeth are pretty obvious in this species, as well as paraherta. Yep.
And I often the eye often sees this sinus, which is it's I think of it more accentuated than even here normally, but it's looped backwards and then up. Mm-hmm. And there's a few other things like I can think of petulans and maybe a couple others that have that. Normally, you just have a scoop out between the teeth and a cutting edge or two in there. Nothing so offset as that particular one. And there's a small tooth there. Does Relativa have that sort of same sort of
not to my way of thinking? It doesn't.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we will get to that one. Yeah, we'll file this down. Yeah, big specimen. And then let's take a look at T6. Get that right. And look for the longer hairs on here.
There you go.
Oops.
Oh, that's good, Sam.
Okay. Yeah, we don't really have to zoom in on that one. But you can see it partially obscuring the surface and much longer than the sparse hairs. Again, your sparse and my long sometimes are things that have to be dealt with, but that's why both of us try to add a little extra information to help the person who's just beginning to look at these things. So I don't know if there's anything else to really talk about here that we haven't spoken. It does almost always have orange hairs throughout the scopal.
Yeah, no black, no dark hairs. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And there's others like Mendica and a couple others, Relativa, have orange hairs too, but more often than not, it's either black in a few cases, or it's an off-white, or sometimes very brilliant white. And orange, I don't know that it's almost always a secondary character, because sometimes the orange can be really faded, but I find that to be kind of characteristic. Like, oh, That's probably latimanus. Look at all that orange hair. So now, so that's the 5-toother. So in contrast, now we're dealing with things that are 4 teeth, and Mike notes here T6 and or S6 with blackish hairs somewhere. And so let's jump to 19. So here again is petulans. So let me get petulans up on deck, and it's got this tooth pattern there. But I'm going to let Mike talk while I get it.
Very common species in the Midwest. It's one of the more abundant Megachiles out here anyway. And kind of a unique pattern on the mandibles of teeth. It looks, as we go through the rest of the species that follow in the key, it looks superficially like a lot of others to the naked eye. But once you get under the scope, it's got some features that are fairly unique to it. I don't know how common it is out your way.
We're right at the northern edge of it. So there's handful of records in Maryland, but not tons. And then to the south, of course, you get more and more. I mean, you might get some, and I think you can get them in southern New Jersey, but I think some of our work there were also the first records for southern New Jersey.
Okay, there you go.
All right. So it's a little bit hard because of the hairs, but here's the 1, 2, 3, 4, and this again, it has this sinus that runs back. I might try and get another specimen that doesn't have all that hair there. And oh, you know what? No, No, I think that's right. Hang on for a second. I may have mixed up my specimens. And let me grab this. Side and grab this one, which I think is the right one. I think I might have. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to look that up online.
Yeah,
That was not.
that was that had a cutting margin between the basal and which petulans doesn't have.
They have pulled that from.
So an interesting thing about petulans, and I think I'm right on this, is the nest has never been found. It's never shown up it has not shown up in any trap nests that I know of. I put out tons over the years where it occurs. So it must be a ground nester. I don't know that for certain, but I think it must be. And we find it in all kinds of sandy areas and hard soil areas, rocky areas, which is also kind of curious.
This is not. I have a bunch of specimens. Let me swap this one out. It's just I'm looking for the right mandible one here. Yeah, a lot of times that it's got this very blade-like mandible, and a lot of times that sinus is stuck way in the back where it's not spreading my mandibles that you can't see it. So through here to see if it looks like I have pollen on or some other goo on several of these. Well, sadly, I don't think I have a good email for the mandible. Well, this might be the best one here. I'll try it. But the mandible is very long and has a unique sinus in the back that's going inward.
That looks like one.
Yeah, but not a great. The mandible's not open, and you can see there's a bunch of pollen or goop from the washing still in there.
But that mandible is very wide apically, and that is, I mean, a lot of them are sort of similar, but petulans is especially so.
Yep. So, and then I think it's also one that has a little bit of the on S6 sticking out on the
yes, just a little bit. Yep.
And that can be confusing. I may have to, this may be one of those pollen ones. Okay, so we'll change the perspective, but if this was parallelis, you would see this rim reflects up, and it's a little bit hard to see here, but this is bare, but is in the same alignment as the remainder of S6. So let me just flip it. And I believe it also has a, we're still on the bare patch things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, you can see where pollen accumulates in there and makes the bare patch difficult to see. Yeah, so actually we would have to look from the side, but you would see that bare area with no hairs attached to it. Lateral view.
Yeah, extremely narrow, but it's there.
But yeah, if you start staring at these things for long enough, you start seeing all sorts of things.
Here's an
A
idea.
little bit more. Yeah. I remember finding this the first time and I don't see that many pictures. And then going, so you can just barely see it and going like, what? This is not supposed to only, a few things. So there's that little bare rim right there. This is the sting. And so you can see, you have indication that there's no hairs there in the middle. That's just what it's caught. And what else do we need to look at here for parallelis? Petulans.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
The space between the back of the eye and the edge of the vertex is super narrow, but we don't need to look at that.
All right. So we'll go there. Now let's see what our next thing here. So looking at petulans versus this is where Pruina would show up if it was the light form, because it wouldn't have the dark hair that would easily split it out.
But even the light form has black, the hind basotarsi has black hairs. At least the ones I've seen. I don't know.
Yep.
Okay.
I had a very nice series, but I talked to, there was a gal, I think in Germany, maybe, or maybe it was the Netherlands, and the Pruina is, I want to say it might be the only native bee on Bermuda. Is that right? But there's something about it being on, maybe it's the only Megachile on Bermuda. But anyway, there was this population, they were looking at the molecular stuff. And so I gave her all the Pruina I had, and hopefully some of that worked and they can take a look at, all this variation around the coast. I have not heard back. That was maybe 2 years ago, but COVID, who knows what's happening. Okay, so yeah, blackish hairs on the base of tarsi, that's probably a great character.
I want to interrupt for a second. We have
Okay.
a really good discussion question, and since we're running toward the end, I want to make sure that we get a chance to address it. So
Okay.
Anne asks, this is about any species of Megachile. Should we consider, while going through the mandible/teeth characteristics into a key, that some patterns may be modified with age, such as rounded or broken in older specimens?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And that's
Really
yeah, the mandibles, just the teeth, their how they appear. In the extreme case, I've seen specimens where there are hardly any teeth left because they use them obviously so much. So that can be that's a challenge with learning female Megachile, is that you really need to see, and illustrations and photographs help, but you really need to see what they're supposed to look like, because a lot of the specimens you may end up picking up are going to be worn, and particularly the finer details of the mandibular structure can be gone.
And this is why museums are important. And both Mike and I basically cut our teeth by identifying specimens, probably at home or at our labs or offices, and then we would take them to a museum and compare them directly, and work out the end of a identification string. If you want to feel confidence, is a direct comparison of known specimens to yours or your purported ones. And after a little bit, you get a notion like, that's not the same species, without necessarily having to, look at specific keys. But and that's how we find new species. Is like the vibe is wrong. But a lot of museums are kind of being dialed back. Several college universities have lost museums, and so anyway, support your local museum and collections. And you want to have your own collection. So Mike and I both have synoptic collections like what I'm using here, and we're hoping to our plan is to expand ours for just this reason.
So, Anne, does that answer your question at all?
I was also going to throw in, we've spoken in previous sessions that one way to double check age, and when we're worried about all the hairs being rubbed off of something, is to look at the wing margins and see if they're shredded, and that might give you a clue if you're on the fence. And Anne says, yes, thank you very much.
Great. And I've seen bees that are still flying that have lost the outer third, which is of course the biggest chunk of the wing completely. And I'm kind of wondering how you can fly. So, a lot of variables impact that, but you can score age at least a little bit by looking at wing wear. All right, so this is a good group to work on, but Claire, how much? I don't have a time thing. How much time do we have?
We have 5, but I am not bounded by time, so that's kind of up to you if you want to run over a little bit.
Okay, well, maybe we'll just introduce the character that ties all these 3 together. There's a bunch actually to talk about, and that in the details of these 3, including a name change here, I think, at least according to some people. But maybe we'll just look at the key character, which again is one of those, like, if you haven't seen it, are hard to deal with, which is Mike, I'll let you talk about that.
In this group, and this is the subgenus Utricaria, I think that's the right way to pronounce it. But they're all old world. None of these are native to North America. These have been purposefully or maybe in some cases accidentally introduced, although I think all of these were purposefully, for alfalfa pollination. And this is the famous alfalfa leafcutter bees, rotundata. In some of the literature, it's called Pacifica. But all of these are very, very similar. They're little, they're really smaller than any of our native species, which is that's a good field character. And on the underside of the abdomen are the important features for the group. And you see these white sternal fascia. They're showing up pretty good here. Now, obviously, if they're covered with pollen, you're not going to see that unless you do some scraping. But that's a pretty good image. You've got the actual scopal hairs, the long hairs that are kind of pointing towards the back, but then those narrow, dense white lines are very dense white hairs that are at the apical margins of the sternites. And all three of those species look like this when you turn them over. But that none of our native species have that appearance.
And we have rotunda up
they
here.
are really tiny.
Yes, yes.
So
And
I
this
think
is
they're
rotunda.
smaller than any of our. Oh, sorry, Claire. Go ahead.
This is rotunda?
Yeah.
Okay.
A rotundata. So, and I think there are no smaller. Is that right? No smaller Megachile other than these species. Are these the smallest?
In the world, you mean?
No, in
Oh.
well, maybe in the world, but
Maybe, I don't know.
in North America.
Yeah, I think in general, yeah, none of our natives are that small, although I have seen some male rotundatas that are larger than I would expect, and maybe that's not really what they were. But anyway, yeah, the size usually is a dead giveaway. Yeah, 10 millimeters or less.
Yep. And I think that's a good stopping place because it would take us more than the remaining few minutes to kind of go through all these interesting little differences in this group and talk about a name change and that kind of thing.
Yep.
So and then, we have other fun things like Grebus and Mendica and Texana, and it turns out there's a lot to talk about here. So we'll have another female section.
Okay.
Next week. Are you available next week, Mike? I can't remember.
I am. I'm here next week.
Right. That is good, and we will do that.
Okay.
Is there any questions from anyone?
There's nothing in the chat, but y'all have the opportunity to unmic at this point.
Yeah, I wonder, just talking out an idea here, that I really enjoy discussions of status and where species are and that kind of stuff. And I know that the IUCN and the NatureServe people are more and more interested in these kinds of things. I wonder if maybe one of our sessions might be a discussion of, and we can try and recruit some more people who know about this, and then have it on tape, discussions of how do you figure out the status of bees? Like, we really have no monitoring program, but we do have information, and I think it's tricky to, like, where are the boundaries? Like, what if there may only historically ever have been a handful of specimens, and now we haven't seen them for years. So what's the status? This kind of philosophical question, and how we talk about conservation, and maybe we also direct people to look for some of these things. Some of it's just a matter of, like, you're not looking in the right places.
Yeah, exactly.
Point of clarification question. Are you thinking about that as like a one session for a lot, like all the bees that we've talked about, or like kind of as a wrap up when we're done with a genus, talk about that in relation to like Megachile and whatever we end up moving on to?
Interesting approach.
I had just had this ill-formed idea just prior to this thing, so I'm throwing it out there. But I kind of think it would be interesting to, just do Megachile and try and bring in several people, like Terry, from the different sections, folks and have maybe have a little separate group where we do a session. I don't know if everyone can attend and whether that's of interest, but you know, Jack Neff and, you know, Zach Portman and a variety of people who, you know, spend a lot of time thinking about these things. Well, people can send us an email and we can let it, you know, we can mull over. We still have quite a ways to go on Megachile, but Megachile would be a good example. We haven't talked about any of the Western ones, but, you know, just a discussion philosophically of how you think about that confronts everybody. And I'm not saying that there's any particular right way, but you got to struggle with junky data, and how that gets indicated is a little problematic sometimes. So
Well, we have
anyway,
a
just a
couple
thought.
of votes in the chat, so I think we should try it. Maybe
Yeah, I
we'll
think
do it
that'd
as
be
a
good.
summary session.
Yeah, because people are making, you know, trying to make decisions, and there's a lot of species that are on like weird lists. Like a lot of state lists are like, I was on a group in the Northeast, and we went through a whole series. We went through every state's list of, let's call them species of concern, however that is played out. And I'm looked at some of these and go like, these don't make any sense. And some of these were like a subgenus. I don't even know how they got on. It just said to me like, okay, you know, we need to spend a little time here thinking about this, maybe. I don't know.
No, I think it's a great idea. It'd be good to
Yeah,
bring a
maybe.
nature serve person on board. They have a more mechanistic way of looking at this.
Yeah. We could, Bruce Stein, I think it was the person that I was working with on some of the other groups. I think, Mike, you worked on some of those topics too, and it was a number of rounds. And then the red list people, I know Hollis was interested in maybe working on that group, but I think they have a little bit different philosophy. So be good to have them on too. Maybe we just want a straight discussion of differences and approaches and data rather than, and then later, if we decide that's useful, we get into, you know, discussions about groups, you know, actual, like, oh, let's talk about megachile of, or megachile of, then we have to define what we're talking about. So, all right.
Fantastic.
We'll just
I think
please.
that's going to happen. We have a lot of approval.
Okay, good.
Okay.
All right. I guess
we're
done.
Okay,
right.
Thanks again, Claire. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.